Jake knew these dogs very well. In secret, he called them the Sycamore Street Gang, a group of strays that roamed the neighborhood as if it were their own. They were a familiar sight patrolling the length and breadth of Sycamore Street, often stopping by Little Green Park or hanging out in front of what used to be Nick's Pizzeria. Even after Nick's place had closed down, the dogs lingered. Nick had always had a soft spot for them, leaving behind scraps of chicken or ham when he could, and the dogs never forgot that kindness. They remained loyal to the memory of that generosity. The gang had its own hierarchy too. The leader was a weathered old boxer whose eyes told the story of betrayal, abandonment, and heartbreak. Jake couldn't help but wonder about the family the boxer had once belonged to, a family he had probably loved deeply. His second in command, the Beta, was a mix with German Shepherd blood, evident in the black and tan coat and the alert, focused way he kept the rest of the group safe. The two youngest members, a pair of playful siblings Jake nicknamed the Terrible Twins, also had a bit of German Shepherd in them. After a hearty meal, their energy was boundless as they frolicked around, reminding Jake that even street dogs had moments of joy. There were other members too, a terrier who was scrappy but affectionate and a generic pavement special, a street mutt of no discernible breed. But the one that tugged at Jake's heart the most was the older labrador retriever. This dog was new to the group, and it was clear that he had only recently been abandoned. His legs were stiff, and his gait was slower than the others, but it was his spirit that seemed the most broken. He hung back from the rest, as if ashamed of his new status, too proud or too heartbroken to fully integrate into the gang. Yet he stayed close, drawn to the comfort of company. Jake felt an immediate connection with him and wished, not for the first time, that he lived somewhere bigger so he could take the Labrador in and give him a proper home. Every evening around 6:30, once the neighborhood had quieted down, Jake would bring food for the Sycamore Street Gang. It had become part of his daily routine, something he looked forward to. The sight of the dogs wagging their tails and the grateful look in their eyes made it all worth it. He had watched the old Labrador slowly become more comfortable around the others. Though still cautious, the Labrador now wagged his tail and stepped forward when Jake arrived with food, as if to say thank you in the only way he knew how. Jake had learned a lot from observing these dogs. Despite their tough lives, they were good animals. They hadn't chosen to end up on the streets. That decision had been made for them by careless humans. All they wanted was food, companionship, and the freedom to roam. The dogs never hurt anyone. They just stuck together and survived the best way they knew how. But today was different. As Jake approached the usual spot where he would find the dogs, he noticed something was off. Their barking, normally playful or alert, had a frantic edge to it. The dogs were gathered around a white hatchback parked awkwardly along the curb. The old boxer barked in a low, commanding tone, while the younger dogs yipped in high-pitched excitement. Jake's heart raced. Something was wrong. As he got closer, the Labrador gave a hesitant wag of his tail, but his eyes were locked on the car. Jake felt an odd sense of urgency, and his instincts kicked in. He made his way to the car, calling out to the dogs in soothing tones, trying to calm them down. Good dogs, he murmured. The Labrador stepped back a bit, giving Jake room to peer inside the car. What he saw sent a jolt of horror through him. Inside the car, under one of the seats, were two tiny kittens. They looked terrified, their small bodies trembling in the sweltering heat. One was black and white, the other a pale, dusty ginger. Both looked barely 6 weeks old. The windows of the car were rolled up, trapping the kittens in what was essentially an oven. Jake's heart sank. He knew that in this heat, it wouldn't take long for the kittens to overheat and die. Jake's mind raced. How long had the car been there? Where was the driver? He glanced around, trying to spot someone, anyone, who might know where the owner of the car had gone. But the street was deserted, and the back of the building where the car was parked offered no clues, no doors, no gates, no signs of life. Whoever had left the kittens in the car wasn't coming back anytime soon. The dogs continued to bark, their anxiety feeding into Jake's own. They knew something was wrong too. Jake circled the car, trying to figure out what to do. His first instinct was to open the door, but when he tried the handle, it was locked. The car alarm went off, filling the quiet street with its shrill, piercing wail. The kittens scrambled deeper under the seat in fear, and the dogs barked even louder, adding to the chaos. Frustration built inside Jake. He had to do something, but what? He looked at the dogs, their eyes wide with worry, and then back at the car. He knew that breaking a window was his best option, but doing so could land him in serious trouble. Memories of his past rushed back to him, his troubled teenage years when he had run with the wrong crowd, hot-wiring cars and causing mayhem just for the thrill of it. He had paid for those mistakes with community service at an animal shelter, and it was there that he had found his love for animals and turned his life around. But now he was a responsible adult, a man who followed the law and tried to do the right thing. Breaking into a car, even to save the kittens, could ruin everything he had worked so hard to rebuild. Yet, the thought of leaving the kittens to die in that suffocating heat was unbearable. Just then, one of the kittens, the little orange one, hauled itself back up onto the seat. It blinked at Jake through the glass, its tiny mouth opening and closing in a silent plea for help. Jake couldn't take it any longer. "Don't worry, little guy," he whispered. "I'm going to get you out of there." Jake quickly scanned the ground and found a large stone. He picked it up and stood beside the car's back window. "Here goes nothing," he muttered to himself before swinging the stone hard against the glass. The window cracked, but it didn't shatter. The car alarm went off again, blaring through the air as Jake swung the stone a second time. More cracks appeared, but still, the glass held. Suddenly, a hand grabbed Jake's shoulder and pulled him away from the car. Jake spun around, half expecting to be tackled to the ground by a police officer. But instead, he found himself face to face with an older man, broad-shouldered and weathered from years of manual labor. "Is this your car?" Jake demanded angrily. "No, but what the hell do you think you're doing?" The man shot back, his voice gruff but confused. "There are kittens inside. They're going to die in this heat," Jake shouted, his frustration boiling over. The man's expression softened as he peered through the cracked window and saw the tiny orange kitten, still panting on the seat. "Oh my God," he muttered, horrified. "I didn't know." "We need to get them out," Jake said urgently. "Do you know whose car this is?" The man shook his head. "I've seen it park here a few times. Might belong to someone who works nearby." Jake didn't have time to waste. "Call someone, security, the police, I don't care. Just get help." The man nodded and pulled out his phone, disappearing down the street in search of assistance. Meanwhile, Jake crouched by the car, watching helplessly as the kitten's condition worsened. The orange kitten was barely holding on, and the black and white one was nowhere to be seen. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the man returned with 2 security guards in tow. One of the guards quickly assessed the situation, recognizing the urgency. "That's Miss Moore's car," he said, dialing her number. "She works in the building. I'll see if I can get her down here." Minutes later, a frazzled woman, presumably Miss Moore, rushed toward the car. Her face paled as she saw the damage to the window and then the kittens inside. "Oh no, I didn't even realize. They're my sister's kittens. I was supposed to bring them to her today, but I got distracted." Jake didn't care about her excuses. "We need to get them out now," he said, his voice sharp with worry. With the security guard's help, the car door was finally unlocked, and Jake wasted no time in scooping the little orange kitten into his arms. The kitten blinked weakly up at him, its tiny body trembling. "There's another one," Jake said, his voice hoarse with emotion. One of the guards gently retrieved the black and white kitten from under the seat and handed it to Jake. The kittens were alive, but barely. Jake held them close as someone fetched bowls of water. The orange kitten lapped at the water gratefully, while the black and white one seemed dazed but began to stir. Relief washed over Jake like a tidal wave. The kittens were safe. Miss Moore, clearly shaken, apologized profusely. "I'm so sorry. I didn't mean for this to happen." Jake shook his head, too exhausted to be angry anymore. "Just make sure it never happens again." As the commotion died down, Jake looked around for the Sycamore Street gang, but the dogs had quietly slipped away. He smiled to himself. They had done their part. Tonight, he would make sure they got an extra meal, a reward for their heroism. They were more than just strays. They were protectors, guardians of the street. And as long as they roamed Sycamore Street, Jake knew that no creature, big or small, would be left behind.